We're about to have a negotiation. I want you to take this negotiation very seriously. It's not a game. This is not for fun. I want you to treat this negotiation like you would treat a negotiation in the real world. If you treat it seriously, you're going to get a lot out of it. I promise that. Okay, folks, look at this. 90,000 our highest, 52.5 our lowest, and everything in between. The exact same item. Does this happen in the real world, folks, where buyers trying to buy the exact same item wind up with a huge range of different results? Why does this happen? What determines, you've all learned this in school, what determines price? Economics 101. Supply and demand. Well, I'm going to argue that. Supply and demand doesn't determine price. What supply and demand gives you is a market. Supply and demand gave you this market, $52,000 to $90,000. So what actually determines price? Information, more importantly, skill. Negotiation skill is what determines price in the real world. Where you land in that market has to do with how well or how not well you negotiated. Anybody here know a buyer, maybe a family member, a friend, a colleague who they negotiate over everything? Everything. They'll negotiate over an appetizer at a restaurant. They're always negotiating. Everything is that they're trying to get the best deal possible. Anybody know somebody like that? Who do you know who's like that?
My dad. He has argues with people at Wendy's.
Yeah, his dad argues with people at Wendy's. Okay, so that's one extreme. And does anybody know a buyer who maybe goes and buys a car and they just pay sticker price? They don't want to deal with negotiating. Who do you know who's like that? A family friend. Pocket change, doesn't want to deal with it. Just let me go on with my life. I don't want to deal with the hassle. Okay, and anybody know a salesperson who's tough as nails? Anybody ever dealt with it? Who?
My mom.
Your mom kills it.
Yeah.
Okay.
She lies to someone.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Whoa. This is not about lying. Anybody know a salesperson who doesn't budge off price? They'll stick to their price. They won't come down. Who do you know who's like that?
Just like car dealers around.
The car dealerships around. And does anybody know, and I used to be a salesperson like this, in my rookie days as a salesperson, as soon as the buyer said boo, I would panic. I would cave. Anybody know a salesperson who, as soon as the buyer starts talking about price, you need to lower your price, they lower it right away? You know, who do you know who's like that? Your ex-boyfriend. In fact, here's an interesting, you should have seen her face when she said that. This is an interesting fact. When buyers say, hey, we need you to do better on that pricing, you need to lower your price, you need to sharpen your pencil, what do you think 80% of salespeople, how do you think 80% of salespeople respond to a buyer trying to get a better price? You know what they say? 80% say, where do you need us to be? The worst thing you can ever say when a buyer says, can you do something about that price? Well, where do you need us to be? What message are you sending your buyer when you say that? Yeah, I got flexibility. I'm willing to come down. The worst thing you can say, yet 80% of salespeople say that exact line. That's a whole other seminar right there. But let's get back to our board here. So negotiating is a skill. It's a skill. The difference between your boyfriend and your lying family member friend, whoever, or your lying mom, it has to do with skill, right? So negotiation is a skill, and by the way, it's a skill that can be learned. I used to suck at negotiating until I learned how to do it. It's a skill that can be learned, and it's a skill that can be practiced, and it's a skill that can be sharpened as well, okay? I'm willing to bet this. We're putting a spotlight on what it is you guys are doing in your negotiations. I'm willing to bet this, that whatever you do in this class, in this limo case, you're most likely doing in the real world as well, because you don't know any better. You're going to keep on making the same decisions until someone smacks you across the head and says, hey, don't make these decisions anymore, right? And that's what I'm going to show you today. So it's interesting. You all walked in with these numbers in your head. $130,000, $49,000. We all walk into negotiations with numbers or positions in our head. But the thing is, these numbers they're literally wishes. We don't know if they're right or if they're wrong. Right? We walk in, we don't know if they're right or wrong, we then meet our opponent, and then our opponent says something, they do something, and then all of a sudden what starts happening to that number that we walked into the negotiation with? What does it start doing? It starts coming down or going up, right? It starts panicking or starts gaining confidence, right? I'm sure a lot of you start panicking in this negotiation, but I'm sure a lot of you also, as soon as the other person opened their mouth, you're like, oh my God, I got this guy, right? I'm going to reel this person in right now, right? So these numbers start fluttering around. One of the most important choices that we make in a negotiation is our first concession, our first move off our opening position. A lot of people screw up that choice. They make the wrong choice and then it's ball game over. This happens all the time, folks. A salesperson goes in, $79,000, and then they make a first concession to $65,000. That's a huge concession. My math is not great. What kind of percent discount is that from 79 to 65? Pardon me? 20%. Yeah, that's a 20% discount. So in the real world, if you're trying to sell a widget and then you give them a 20% discount right off the bat, what is that buyer thinking? The real price is 20%. Maybe you lose trust in that person. Why you overcharged me? And you're also thinking, hey, if they made a 20% concession, there's probably more. I'm going to reel this person in. And look what happened. Look at our buyer wound up getting $58,000. I'm willing to bet that happened because the seller went from 79 to 65. Our buyer's automatically thinking, oh my God, this is really going well for me. I'm going to try to get more money off, right? So we got to watch those first concessions. Here's another one. Great opening, 130, fantastic. I love that. But at an opening like 130, why didn't you settle at 90 like our team right over there? Because you went from 130 to 70. You made a ridiculous concession. I apologize for being harsh there, but when you make a $60,000 concession, you're telling everybody that I'm a crook. I shouldn't be doing business. Why am I overinflating the price? Right? So these are the messages you send. We all go into a negotiation and we're always sending messages. You always want to make sure you're sending the right message. Same thing with our buyers. Look at our buyers. I mean, here, let me find one here. So here's one. Our buyer goes in saying, I got this. $50,000 I'm going to buy this limo. All of a sudden it comes time to make their offer. Okay, I'll give you $70,000 for it. Why does that happen? Well, because again, our buyer probably walked into the negotiation and all of a sudden our seller ain't budging. Our seller, starting at 79, she makes a stingy concession to 75. We call that a stingy concession, a very small concession. Probably sent the message to the buyer, hey, I'm not going to go down very much, and our buyer panicked and wound up opening up at $70,000, right? So same thing on the buyers. Whenever I see a buyer's best and then their opening is more than their best, it means that they panicked at some point in the negotiation. Again, we got to watch the messages we send, right? We can't panic like this in a negotiation. So another interesting thing I just want to point out quickly. Look at this. 0, 5, 5, 0, 5, 5, 5, 0, 0, 0, 5, 0, 0, 0. We love zeros and fives. When we concede to zeros and fives all the time, when we're always using 0 and 5s, what message do we send the other party? Pardon? We're being very predictable, right? Oh, you keep on coming down by 5s, there's probably another 5 in it for me. What's wrong with a 2? What's wrong with a 7? There's nothing wrong with those numbers. For my seminars, I never charge $550 or $950. I charge $997 or $982 or sometimes $982.76, right? What does that show? When I charge $987, what message am I sending the other party when I have a 7 at the end of my price? I thought about it. I considered it.